And welcome back, Fourth and Long fans. It's your footy correspondent, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another off-season supporter series podcast chat. And today, ladies and gentlemen, as I told you, I'm trying to find state league chats. So we're going to have another state league chat today. I am joined today by Dave, all the way out from Perth, West Australia. Dave, thank you for joining me today.
G'day, mate. Thanks very much for having me.
Awesome, awesome. Before we get into the footy, which I know that's why everybody has tuned into the episode, I want to find out just a little bit about you personally outside of the game of footy. So, just a real quick bio on who you are away from the game of football.
Right. Well, I'm just the wrong side of 50. So, a bit of an older fella these days. I'm lucky enough to live in a suburb in Perth called Scarborough, which is beachside. So, I live a few hundred metres from one of the main beaches in Perth. So, over summer, enjoy a bit of time down there. I like other sports. I'm not a massive sports person, but I do love my cricket and soccer now. I used to hate soccer growing up, but I went to live in England for a few years, and by the time I left, I enjoyed that. So I tend to try and catch the Liverpool games when I can, as I'm a Liverpool supporter. Apart from that, I just work and done a bit of travel over the years, and getting into me older years now. Looking forward to hopefully retiring in a few years.
Awesome, awesome. Hey, that is fantastic. And I love hearing that you got the soccer bug because I think it's one of those games I truly appreciate. But this is a footy podcast, so let's jump right into it, sir. As you said, you're right around the 50 years old. So I gotta ask, what is your favorite thing about the sport of footy?
Um, it's just an exciting game to watch. It's a really fun game to play. It doesn't really matter. You don't have to be a certain body type or a height or ability level. Anyone can play. It's really good fun. And then, sort of at the higher levels, it's so exciting to watch. I don't tend to watch a lot of replays. For me, it's the excitement in the moment of anything could happen. You can, like Frio were in the qualifying final last year. You can be down by 6 or 7 goals, look completely out of it, and in the space of a quarter, the whole game's on its head. You don't know what's going to happen in any given game, and I really enjoy that. The skill levels great to watch. It's a fairly unique game. Yeah.
Yep, at 360 degrees, you never know where a tackle is coming from. Absolutely, absolutely love that. Like I said, I had had a short career when it comes to it, and that was the one thing that always terrified me is you never know where a tackle is coming from. You just always have to be ready. So we jump into it. I want to go back into the memory bank, sir. Can you remember your earliest footballing memory?
Um, I think probably the earliest I remember is coming home from church on a Sunday morning and my old man putting on the football panel chat show on telly. So they would have a group of fellas. There was Percy Johnson and Gary Carvolth, and people my age will remember them. And they talked WAFL footy because we were in Perth. WAFL was the competition that everyone followed. So that was my earliest memory, probably from I don't know, 8, 9, 10, maybe.
Fantastic. Hey, it's the local one. It's easy to access to, and I bet you probably didn't get much VFL over in Perth, so that 100% makes that under 100% makes sense. So anybody that's on the YouTube video that knows the waffle would probably know your club just by the video. But for the people that are listening to the audio version, what is the state league club we're going to be talking about today, and why is it that you became to support them?
All right, so we're talking about the mighty Claremont Tigers. I actually came to support them because my best mate supported them. So I was 10 years old, so 1981. And my mate said to me, "You should go for Claremont." So I went, okay. So that's where it came from. And we happened to go on to win the premiership that year, so that didn't hurt either.
Oh, that's all of life is timing. Wow, he was a really must have been a really good salesman to get you to go for Claremont with that pitch there. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, so it's your mate that got you into footy. Your mate got you into Claremont. How is the rest of the family? Are there other waffle supporters in the family? And if so, what clubs do they go for? And then how's the banter if they do go for different clubs?
Well, my father, he's a member of South Fremantle. His father was South Fremantle. My mum and my brother both barracked for East Perth, and my other brother barracked for West Perth growing up, but he sort of swapped between teams over the years. Um, yeah, so certainly my old man and I are fairly keen. He goes every week to watch South play, and I go every week to watch Claremont play. Um, and the year I started barracking for Claremont, it was his team that we beat in the grand final. So
Ah, oh, I bet that was fun to just look at your dad and go, "Ooh, hey, who's got the premiership?"
it
I
was
love it. That is
took
great.
both sides who are just some incredible players who are playing legends of the game and guys who went on to have big careers in Victoria and be known in the VFL as absolute champions as
Mhm.
well. So, yeah, it was pretty cool.
Fantastic, fantastic. All right, I'm gonna test you a little bit. Being a Claremont supporter for as long as you have, can you tell us just a quick little kind of synopsis history of Claremont that you know of, and why they're such a great club?
Well, Claremont, we're coming up towards 100 years in the WAFL. We joined in 1926. Um, didn't have much success very early, and then won a hat trick of premierships from 38 to 40, just prior to the war, and that put a bit of a stop on our success. We were then pretty bad for a long time. We won a premiership in 1964, so we went in against East Fremantle, complete underdogs, and beat them by 4 points. And one little interesting bit from that, one of the guys who played in that premiership side was a guy by the name of Ian Brayshaw, whose son Mark went on to be a Claremont Premiership player, and his son, Ian's grandson, is Andy Brayshaw, who's widely
Hmm.
tipped to be the next Fremantle captain. So there's that real link there. Yeah, and then after 64 again, nothing for a long time until the 81 Premiership. And then since then, we've been pretty successful. We've played a lot of grand finals. We've lost a lot of grand finals. Bit of a Collingwood in that way. But
Hmm.
yeah, so we were very proud at the club in terms of developing our own players. A lot of the other clubs bring in exports and that sort of thing. And even up to last year, we had no imported. We had one imported player, but he'd been at the club for 8 years already. So
Hmm.
everyone else had come through our junior system, which we've taken great pride in. And we develop a lot of players for the AFL as well. There's a number running around at the moment, including a couple of Brownlow medalists. And yeah, so yeah, that's it. We've long periods of non-success and then a quick flurry of flags here and there. So it's pretty much us.
That there's nothing wrong with that. And again, as you said, being a club that develops a lot of AFLers, you got to take a lot of pride in that. Like I said, and getting there and be consistently good is usually something that's always great. So let's jump into. We were talking a little bit off mic before we hopped on because I added this question because I really want to know who, in your opinion, is Claremont's biggest rival and why?
Over the journey, it would probably be, well, Subiaco are our natural rival because we're both Western suburbs clubs and we don't like each other very much. The last couple of years, probably West Perth, we've had a real strong rivalry with them. We match very well with West Perth in terms of we have a very good midfield. They've got a very good forward line. We've got a very good defence. So we're pretty even. As I said to you off camera, we've had some interesting times in recent years. So we had a very good coach by the name of Darren Harris, and he coached us for a number of years. After we lost the 2020 grand final, the club decided not to renew his contract. Now he was a premiership captain at West Perth and a premiership coach at West Perth. And so he went back to West Perth. And of course, we played them in the grand final last year and lost to them by 2 goals. We also had one of our champion players who got life membership at Claremont when he retired, come out of retirement the week after receiving his life membership and say he was coming back to play for West Perth. So they've got 2 former Claremont players in that premiership side. They've just pinched another former Claremont player for next season who's come off the West Coast Eagles list. So yeah, there's a real rivalry there at the moment, and it's great. You know, they're a very proud club with a very long history. I think they've been around since the 1800s.
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah. But I think your rival on any given day is whoever you're playing, and you know, it's but yeah, Subiaco is, like I say, being a western suburbs is which is sort of more the salubrious areas of Perth.
Hmm.
Um, they're our traditional hated rivals who we just despise.
Yeah, and sometimes being a Sydney Swan supporter, it's been kind of the same thing with me. It's you would think GWS geographically, but for the long there for a while in the late or early 2010s, it was Hawthorn because it always seemed like Hawthorn and them would always, and in the early 2000s you had the West Coast rivalry, 05-06 grand finals. So sometimes your rivals can kind of come out of nowhere. So it's always fascinating. So thank you for that. So let's go back in time a little bit again. Can you remember the first Claremont item that you were given or bought?
Um, it would either be a scarf or a jumper that I would have got when I was maybe 12. I do remember getting a Claremont jumper and a Claremont scarf around the same time. So one of those two things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so I'm one of those. I love for me one of the best things about footy is that is interacting with supporters and fans is fascinating for me because I get to hear the passion, I get to hear the stories, I get to hear the connections with the club. So I asked this question for me because I love hearing people describe their fandom because everybody fans differently. Nobody fans exactly the same. So just really quickly, can you describe your fandom to Claremont? Are you one of those you go to every single game you possibly can? If you can't go, you're listening to it on the radio or watching it on the telly. Or are you one of those, I will see the game eventually?
I'm there nearly every week. I tend to, if it clashes with a Fremantle game, I tend to go to the Fremantle game. But yeah, no, I'm there every week. There's a couple of guys I go with. They've got these big tiger skins that they wear on their heads. Ed and Chris, they're well known around the place, and we're very loud, very vocal. Cross the line occasionally, but I do try and keep it nice and light. Yeah, so no, I'm there all the time. Go to the A. I've been a Claremont member since I was 17 years old. So I joined in as a member in 1988. So approaching about 35 years as a member of the club now.
Fantastic. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely love it. So we'll go back in the past a little bit. Can you remember the first Claremont game you attended live?
Unfortunately, I can. My old man took my brother and I to the 1983 grand final. So it was Claremont's third grand final in a row. We'd won the first one against South Fremantle. We'd lost the year before to Swan Districts, and we were playing Swan Districts again and went down by 21 points to them. So that was their middle of a hat trick. They won three in a row from 82 to 84, and two of them were against us. We've actually played them in four grand finals and lost all of them. So they love to remind us of that.
It's one of those, it's like, oh God, if you're in the grand final against Swan Districts, you're like, oh, this is not good.
Oh, the 2010 grand final, I still have scars from. They beat us by 1 point, and it was the son of a former Claremont champion who won the game for them. Just yeah, I have never been able to watch that game ever again. It's one of the best games of WAFL people say they've ever seen, but I can't bear it. So.
Yeah, too painful. 100% understand. So I love this next question just because for me, I've heard this question described as it's like as a parent choosing your favorite child because especially if you're very passionate about your team, it's hard to pick a favorite. Do you have a favorite player, Claremont player of the past, and do you have a favorite player currently on Claremont's list?
Well, my favourite Claremont player of the past is my favourite footballer ever. And he also went on to play for Fremantle. It's Dale Kickett.
Hmm.
The guy was incredible. He was so talented. He started out as a wiry half forward, ended up as a really strong backman, clean ball player, very brave, not an ounce of malice in him. He wasn't out there to hurt anyone. He just went hard at the ball, and yeah, he's my favourite player ever. And his cousin Derek Kickett was at Claremont. He was my favourite player before Dale, and yeah, at the moment, I'm just trying to think of who's down there. We've had a few retirements. Yeah, I would have said Jared Hardesty probably, but he's just retired, so that's a bit of a shame. Tim House, I quite like. He's a really big forward. He's from the country, and you know he's from the country in the way he plays. He just anything gets in the way, he just runs straight through. I love watching him. Um, just trying to think who else we've got out there. Yeah, Deck Mountford, the captain, I really like him. Probably, how's he probably at the moment now that Hardesty's gone?
Okay. Okay. All right. So we'll go into it. We've done some past. Now let's go to the present a little bit, and we'll kind of review it a little bit. Thoughts on last season? I did a little research, saw Claremont again, made the finals, 13-5, very respectable, good season again. So what are your quick thoughts on Claremont's season last year?
Oh, we had a good season. Very inconsistent. So we played some good footy, and then we were dreadful in some games. When we played to our ability, we were very, very good, and I think that showed in the finals. That we played our first final against East Fremantle at their home ground, and they just humiliated us. Really, really embarrassed us, and we went down by I think it was 7 goals. 2 weeks later, we came back and played the same team on the same ground and just destroyed them. So just shows footy's above the head, above the
Hmm.
shoulder, sorry. And you know, it was consistency last year that we found frustrating. But as you say, we had a good record. We made it through to the grand final. If you know, it wasn't, and you know, though I say, you know, if my uncle, if my auntie had bollocks, should be my uncle. But
Hmm.
you know, if we'd nailed a few shots early in that grand final and being instead of being three straight to 0-3, which it
Hmm.
was, you know, I think we would have probably won. We came back very strongly, but just left it a bit late.
Hmm.
And all credit to West Perth; they're a very good side, and
Hmm.
you know, they fight very hard. So
It's
yeah,
not easy. It's not easy to get to a grand final, so it's something positive to look at. Yes, it stings to lose one. Trust me, as a Swan supporter, that Geelong grand final was hard to watch at times, but you can't really bash the season when you get to a grand final because there's accomplishments when you get there. So yes, it's difficult and you're frustrated because you want to win one, but it happens. So another good season. I jump to the next question. And again, I know this is different when it comes to I'm used to the AFL where you have the draft, you have sign and trade and all that. I know the waffle, the VFL, and the Sandful all are the same thing. The off season is much, much different because it is a completely different animal. You're getting delisted free agents, you're getting retirees, you're getting people that are no longer deciding to play footy, you're getting youth kids up. So kind of what has been your off season this year for Claremont a little bit, and has it been something that's given you a lot of confidence going into the next year?
yeah, it's been interesting. I know we've got Joel Weston back from Freo. He got delisted and he'd been drafted from Claremont, so he's back down with us. Unfortunately, Zach Langdon, who was a Claremont product who got delisted from West Coast, has decided to go and play at West Perth. Um, I do know we've got a couple of recruits. I don't know much about them. We don't tend, like I've said before, we don't tend to recruit from outside the club. We've always developed our own talent. But I think we've learned over the last couple of grand finals that we've lost. I mean, we lost by it was 3 or 5 points to South Fremantle in 2020 and 2 goals to West Perth last year. And both of them had import players, which made a difference to the game. So I think we've learned that we probably need to just top up that little bit. So that gives me a lot of confidence. I think this year West Perth will be thereabouts again. We'll be thereabouts again. East Fremantle are the side that I think look pretty scary this year. They'll be very tough to beat.
All righty. So, and as you kind of previewed there, what are your thoughts on next year? Do you think Claremont can get back to a grand final and maybe get over the hump and win one? Or are you kind of one of those where let's make the finals and then let's see what happens because the finals are always a different animal?
Yeah, definitely. I, as I say, I think us, West Perth and East Fremantle are looking like the three sides. Although South Fremantle have also got some good recruits come back to them over the off season. East Fremantle were a bit unlucky last year, so they started with an incredible list and then had players pinched in the pre-season draft and the mid-season draft. All their ruckmen pretty much got taken. The bloke who won the Sandover medal, which is the WAFL's equivalent of the Brownlow medal, he was killing it for East Fremantle and did his knee a few weeks out from the finals. And even though he didn't play the last 2 or 3 weeks, still went on to win the Sandover medal. For us, I think we'll be thereabouts. If you can get to a grand final, anything can happen. That's my view. We've lost grand finals when we were odds-on favourites to win, and we've won ones that no one thought we could. So get there and see what happens.
Yeah, 100% agree. Make the biggest thing is make finals and then roll the dice and have some fun with it because you just never know. So, all right, I'm gonna have a little fun with you here, Dave. I love this because especially over here in the States, we love kind of everybody says they can do everything the best. So I'm gonna have some fun. For one day, I'm gonna install you as the list manager for Claremont Footy Club. The
Oh
other
god.
teams in the WAFL have opened up their list. You can make one move. You can bring in one player from a fellow WAFL club. Who's the one player you bring to Claremont?
Keitel from West Perth, a dominant forward. Yeah, and that's been our downfall is we haven't always had a dominant forward line. Keitel from West Perth, hands down.
Alrighty. So I'm gonna have a little fun. Most of the people that listen to this podcast know I am a avid and huge supporter of women's footy. I think it is a huge growth opportunity, not only for the AFL but all clubs in Australia because you get women's clubs in there, and I think you expand much better. So I must ask this: do you keep an eye on the Claremont women's team? And if so, what did you think of their season this last year?
I do. I actually go to more Claremont women's games than I do Fremantle. We had a fantastic year. We Our women's reserves team won the grand final,
All right.
and our women's league team came up against East Fremantle in the grand final, who hadn't lost a game all season and won. So we got 2 flags. So we were
Awesome.
very happy.
That is
Um,
fantastic.
yeah, very exciting. And had a couple of girls drafted into the AFLW. So no, the coach down there, Jack Schwartz, he's doing an incredible job. I saw in the paper during the week he's thrown his hat into the ring for the Fremantle coaching job with the Fremantle women's side. So
Mhm.
they could do a lot worse than him. He's a very good coach.
Yeah, if he's got that accomplishment of a flag next year, I don't think it's a bad thing. So, unfortunately, I was a little disappointed that that job came free. I honestly don't think the Frio
Oh,
coach really had a bad. I just that Fremantle AFLW team last year, they were just stricken with injury, COVID, and all sorts of just. They had a bad karma year. They had the black walked by the black cat year last year. I felt so horrible for them because so talented and they just nothing went right for them last year. In
mm.
fact, actually, this is a great transition. Anybody that's watching the YouTube video, and you've said it a couple of times too, your AFL side, you've told me before, is Fremantle. So is it another one of those kind of like Claremont that being a Perth kid that it was easy to go for Fremantle, or did you ever have any inkling of choosing another club in the AFL?
I had followed the clubs that the Claremont players went to. So I'd barracked for a number of teams over the
Mhm.
years, North Melbourne. I'd barracked for Western Bulldogs at one stage, Carlton, West Coast, just wherever the Claremont players were. In 1994, when they announced that there was going to be a second team out of Perth and it was going to be based in Fremantle, they announced Jared Neesham as coach, and he had just won 4 premierships with Claremont in 7 years. So I was like, yep, I'm following Jared Neesham, and a lot of Claremont people barracked for Fremantle for that reason. And then as he put the squad together, a third of the inaugural Fremantle squad were Claremont players. And
Mhm.
people here used to joke and call them the Claremont Dockers because there was so that was natural following through. If you're Claremont, you then go to Fremantle. And I know a number of Claremont people who dropped off Freo when they sacked Neesham,
Mhm.
but I've just stuck on. There's always been that strong link. The current captain of Fremantle, Nat Fife, he's a Claremont product. I watched him kick 6 goals from half forward in a Colts grand final, under 19s grand final for Claremont. There's a number of players there who are Claremont products, and so that's how I got into Freo, was through the Claremont link.
Yeah, fantastic. And then you also support the women's team as well. You said that you watch Claremont a little bit more than the Fremantle girls, but again, I said, this year was kind of crazy. But really, really quick, because of the fact that Fremantle had that Claremont connection, is it weird when you play Peel Thunder, knowing that a lot of the Peel Thunder kids are usually Fremantle younger players or listed players that just can't make the top 22?
No, there's no step back. And one of the guys I go with, he's a mad West Coast fan, and when we play their reserves, he's the same. No, it's Claremont. Claremont's my club,
Hmm.
and I've often said if we had a system like in the EPL of relegation and promotion, and
Hmm.
Claremont and Freo came up in the same division, I'd be Claremont. But they're my club. I
Hmm.
love Fremantle. I've been a member of Fremantle since they were formed. I was in the first 2,000 people to join the club at Fremantle as a member. Um, but yeah, Claremont's where my heart is.
There's nothing wrong with that. I absolutely love that. All right. So there's going to be a couple of questions a little bit more AFL based here. And I'm very fascinated to ask this next one just because you are being somebody in Perth. I'm very fascinated on your opinion on this. Is that the grand final saw itself outside of Victorian soil in 2020 and 2021, finding it out in Perth in 2021. And I have to say this, I think Perth did a fantastic job for that grand final. I thought it was absolutely magnificent. But I was surprised to hear Victorian media, which again are notoriously a little bit more based for their state, that they were actually bringing up the topic of should the grand final potentially become like the Super Bowl over here in the US, a traveling championship game. I was fascinated by this. So I've been asking everybody as a Perth-born person, what do you think of this thought process? Do you like the idea of potentially getting another grand final in Optus Stadium, or is there a little part of you that likes the tradition in the AFL that it plays at the MCG?
Yeah, I'm a bit torn on that. I think for fairness, it should travel. I think it can't because they've got a 40-year agreement.
A
So
50-year contract. Yep.
yeah, that's it. So they're locked in. So I guess it's a hypothetical,
It's
but
pie in the sky. Like I said,
you know,
I know
it's
that
difficult.
the comment section will lose its mind on this one.
I think in terms of it being a travelling one, I think it'd be difficult if you weren't playing it at the home ground of one of the sides. If you played it in Perth and it was Brisbane versus Sydney, so all their supporters have to travel to Perth. I think that would be a bit rough, especially since the airlines jack up all the prices in the week
Mhm.
leading up to the grand final. It would be nice. It should be probably played. I don't know at the ground of the side finishing highest, but then you look at the FA Cup's always played at Wembley. That's a great tradition.
Mhm.
The G's a great ground. The thing I find that sticks in my craw a bit is the unfairness of it. As a Fremantle supporter, I think the year we played the grand final there, we played one game at the MCG all year. Hawthorn played
Mhm.
there all. Richmond play there all the time, so they get a really unfair advantage. And early on in that grand final, you could see the Freo players didn't really know how to play the ground well. The way the breeze moves, a lot of their shots on goal just going everywhere but where they're meant to go. So I think that's the one thing that really sticks for me is if you're going to play it there, you've got to give all the sides, particularly sides playing who are in the top part of the thing, a chance to play there and get familiar with the ground.
Nope, 100 again. 100% agree with you, and I think it is a common discussion point for especially interstate clubs is the fact that they don't always get a lot of games at the MCG where some of those Victorian teams they're getting 5, 6, 7, 8 games at the G, so they
Mm.
have much more experience playing it. Now, I think the building of Optus I think has helped you because I think it's a little bit more like the MCG because of the kind of um the way it's built and this I think the dimensions were actually built specifically just like the MCG, so I think it's kind of helped. But
Mm.
again, it's the travel I think is definitely one of those as well that I think is one of those, unfortunately, for especially you out in Perth, is that's not a short trip to Victoria and back. So
Mm.
100% understand. So we will stay in the AFL and we'll actually go to this upcoming season. And I'm interested to hear this as a Fremantle supporter. the gather round, the magic round ripoff that the AFL decided to do in South Australia this year, which I find absolutely fascinating, it has got me intrigued because I'm hearing mixed reviews on this. Some people are absolutely excited for it. Some are kind of like and some are they are thoroughly not happy with this. So as a Fremantle supporter and a person in Perth, what are your thoughts on Gather Round at first? And do you have any interest in potentially getting over to SA and seeing any of the games over there?
I'm probably a bit nonplussed by it. I don't quite understand the point of it. Um, I'm certainly not going over for it. And from what I can remember of the draw for that weekend, I think Fremantle's got a pretty crap ground and crap time to play in, and yeah, look, we'll see. I mean, it may well be something that you get to the end of that round and go, oh, that was fantastic,
Mhm.
or but at the moment I'm like, nah, it's just another round of footy. And all right, so they're all playing in the one city, but for me in Perth, we get one game here per weekend. And every other game's on TV. So this is just one less game in Perth for me for the weekend.
Mhm.
I'll be at Claremont Oval anyway, watching my Tigers. So.
I love it. I absolutely love the honesty on that one. So, as I said in every single one of these episodes, I'm doing research for with these next couple of questions because I haven't been to Australia. It is on my bucket list. It is on my list of things to do. I want to do this. So, I'm doing some research. As an American, we love our food at our sporting events. So, I have to ask, what is your go-to food when you go to the footy?
Usually a pie. I don't tend to buy a lot of food at the footy because it's bloody expensive.
Hmm.
But yeah, it'll be a Mrs. Max pie. Yeah, that's my go-to. That and have a beer. Usually I'll have a beer,
Hmm.
but yeah, Mrs. Max pie will be what I grab.
All right, the beer and the pie combination is one I've heard a lot. And then I love this one. Where is your ideal place to sit when you go to the footy? Where is the one place that if you can pick your seat every single time, this is the place that I should be sitting to watch the footy?
I actually had the ideal spot at Subiaco Oval before we moved. So
Hmm.
I actually sat right next to where the Freo players run in and out. Like they ran right past my shoulder. So that was my favourite spot. In terms of viewing, on the wing. The wing's the best spot to get the view across the ground. As a kid, it was behind the goals because that was the excitement area. But yeah, on the wing, you get a better view of the game.
Fantastic. And then I always end my episodes with this because I love hearing the differences and especially talking to a state league fan. So you've got even more games to talk to me about. What is your favorite game of footy you have ever seen? Live, on the telly, at the ground. What is your favorite game of footy you have ever seen?
Oh, wow. I mean, the go to for me would probably be the Demolition Derby. I was at that game in 2001 when Fremantle were down by 6 goals, 7 goals. I think we were down by at one stage, 42 points. Came back to win by a point. West Coast came out before the siren. Gardner was punching Pavlich, and it was on. And we won the fights. We won the game. So that sort of sticks out for me as that. And then sort of from a WAFL perspective, probably the 1996 grand final, we beat East Perth by 4 points, and no one thought we were going to win. We played a really good game and won that. So that's probably the Claremont one that sticks out for me.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you. A couple more games for me to look out at and can try to find some footage of for sure. So, Dave, this has been a fantastic conversation. That is going to do it for my questions today. Again, I genuinely appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing a little bit about the Claremont Tigers for me because I plan on this year trying to keep an eye much more on the WAFL, the Sample, and the VFL a lot more because I think seeing state league footy, I think is really, really good. I know I'm used to the AFL, but I really think it'd be good for me because I love this sport so much to keep an eye on some of these state leagues. So thank you very much for sharing your love of Claremont with me today.
Oh, no worries. And thank you very much for having me. It's great to have people show an interest in the state league. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Well, you were not the first person to tell me that, and I genuinely appreciate it. And again, it's one of those. I love the game of footy. I play the game. I coach the game of footy over here nowadays. I just absolutely want to try anything that I can to not only learn about it, but to share it because there's people over here in the States that I think would absolutely love this sport. But there's many Aussies that have latched on to me and have showed me so much kindness that I want to be able to share this love and to be able to reciprocate it. So thank you very much for joining me again. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this episode. Again, keep an eye out. We have more WAFL, Sandful, VFL, and AFL club chats still to come through this off season. We are going to get to March till the AFL season starts. So keep an eye out for that. And we will be back with another episode very, very soon.